continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan, our buddy Frankie Corrado coming up here in a moment. Catch up with Frankie, get his take on rookie camps open. Obviously, the big camp opening up in about a week, less than that now. Before you know it, they'll be playing games.
Hosting his own show.
Hosting his own show, yes. He's a media superstar right now.
I got to be honest.
Corrado.
Like, camp should, like, it's September 13th. Like, what the hell's going on here?
Come
on.
Let's
get going. Like, I'm not, like, hockey camp, like, camp should have been open by now. They should have been.
I agree.
Noodles,
We do this all the time.
Thing about it, the stupidest thing about it is the guys are having their own kind of camps before camp. It's like,
yeah,
they're basically telling you they're on the ice. These guys never leave the ice. They take 2 weeks off and they go back on the ice.
Yeah.
But they're like, all right, we've had our 3 weeks at the cottage. Let's get back at this.
Captain skates. And, like, it should have started this week. Because I remember, like, we all remember, like, September 11th happened the other day where you all remember where you were. That's the first day of training camp. Like, I was in Minnesota. Like, it should have been this week. I don't know why, especially with that Four Nations Cup coming up. Like, the season's going to go on forever again. Instead of, like, let's get going.
That's the reality. I mean, that's where it is. In the PA, they're always fighting for less games and less practices and less time on the ice, and that applies with every players' association, which I can understand. But that affects things, and it seems like the theme, for the Leafs camp this year is they're trying to establish some competition and build upon competition, and I'll believe that when I see it. Because in the salary cap era, generally, you know where your money's going. You know who's made the team.
That, Hayes. Like, there's a couple guys that are trying out for spots, and like
that's it.
Yeah.
Hey, it's really going to be a battle. Like, even Max Pacioretty, Brad Treliving said, "Well, I guess he's going to have to show us, but we think he's with us the whole year." Like, he's basically said, this guy's already on the team. He's made the team. We've agreed to the deal, and that's it. And, if he plays, he plays. If he doesn't, he doesn't in training camp, but the guy will be there opening night.
For a guy like him, he would have to alarmingly stink the joint out for them to say, okay, we got a problem.
It'd have to get on the ice, and this guy's forgotten how to play hockey. Like, or Father Time's caught up, and you remember, like, he used to be a hell of a skater. Like, Pacioretty, that was one of his probably strengths, was he was a big, strong guy, had the powerful legs, and had a really explosive stride. If all of a sudden he doesn't have that and doesn't separate him, then he's just another guy,
Right.
That's really what it is.
That's his game, exactly. The blazing speed, the power, and his ability to score some goals, which I presume they know what they're getting, because my understanding, he's been up here for like a month. He went through the physicals. He's been skating here. They've seen him. They know what he's about. But generally, every camp, has its own storylines, and there will be some surprises. There will probably be a couple of guys who are off the radar right now that we're not thinking about that maybe has a good camp. But even that, again, in the cap era, it doesn't really mean much. If you have the ability to go to the minors without waivers, that factors in. What your contractual status is, who you're competing with, and what their status is, makes it more and more complicated. But I think there could be a battle in net, although I think they hope Joseph Woll is going to be the number one guy. And I think if Woll has a decent, healthy camp, he'll start opening night. Bit of a battle on your third pair, maybe. Bit of a battle on the fourth line, maybe. The Ryan Reeves question is legit. Do you play him or not? Because he's a different beast. He's not going to show you anything in the preseason that says, wow, that he really found his step, or now he's going to score us more goals this year. You know who he is and what he represents. You got to make a call on whether or not you want to play him. Here he is, Frankie Corrado, joining us. How do we describe Frankie? Is it former NHLer, TSN Hockey analyst, radio host? Like, how do you want to be described here? How do you want us to tee you up?
However you want, man. It's up to you. I'm happy to fill in. You should have seen like the roster of guys that were unavailable to host gameplay today. Like, we were probably 8 or 9 deep, and there was rumors they were going to go ESPN radio for 2 hours. And I said, if you're just going to do that, let me just host for 2 hours. How bad could it be?
Was the Grappler mentioned? Was the Grappler mentioned as an on-air personality to fill in, or was he bypassed?
No, I don't remember hearing the Grappler's name. Like, I think it went from Kaz, who normally hosts the show, Al's brother, Tatty, Death Row, Vin Scully, Reg Dunlop, and AK, and none of those guys could host it today.
Wow.
And here you are. And I thought you did a phenomenal job. And now everyone else needs to step aside. Right, everyone else needs to realize that the pecking order has changed now. It's Frankie Corrado comes first, and the other guys might get a call if they're lucky.
Why did you say yes? Like, I would have just been like running and like, no way, I'm not doing that. Like I don't know why you put your hand up and was like, okay, I can do this. Like, I remember Struddy had his own radio show in Edmonton. I was his second guest of all time. He had his cousin on, Scott Niedermayer, as his first guest. I was his second guest, and it was amateur hour. Like, he was like a game show host. It was Frankie, all over the map.
How did it even come to your attention? Like, how did that opening even come to your attention? Because you usually wouldn't be asked.
Aaron Karolnik was like, I was talking to him on the phone one day. He goes, we have no one to host gameplay on Friday the 13th. Like, why don't you just do it? What are you doing that day? I said, I actually have a day off. Like, I could host a radio show for 2 hours, and I bill for everything I do, so there is a little added financial incentive. I was happy to fill in.
Attaboy. I love it, man. I remember going on that Struddy show, too. I was early in the process, too, man. I was a week one guy, I think.
It was.
It was
how was that show
He was
called?
hosting a show from 9 p.m. to midnight.
Right.
And it was just... Like, he would it was like he had a sheet of paper written down of things he was going to get to and comments that he wanted to make about you. He'd be like, hey, we are our host, or our guest, Jamie McLennan, with a weak glove hand. And he would, like, have, like, little comments, like, written down. I was like, buddy, just...
Let it breathe.
Oh, my God. It was all over the map. How'd you feel, Frankie?
It was good. It felt a little foreign. Like, Hayes makes it look so easy. The ins and outs, like, getting a break, bringing someone in, the segues. Like, Hayes makes it look way too easy. But it was all right. Like, if I felt not as fluid as, maybe the other stuff. But it's all good. It's all good. I was happy to be a part of it. And
awesome.
Yeah, first timer. Speaking of Struddy, real quickly, I know he sells a lot of stuff. I got, did you guys sell your old baby stuff when you didn't have any use for it? Because I got stuff to sell.
I don't know
what the protocol is.
We gave them away. Like, my younger sister had 2 kids that were younger than my kids, so, like, a lot of stuff is filtered that way. You want to get a side eye. My brother-in-law, every time we show up at their house, it's like, here's 2 buckets of this, and he's like, really? Do we need all this stuff? Like... Because I remember my sister-in-law doing that to me, like being like, well, we're done with it. You're taking it. And I'm like, we don't want this stuff anymore. Please, we have too much stuff.
Drive to that giant green bin that says used clothing and put it in there. Somebody could make
Someone
use of
can
it.
use it. Someone can take it.
I got this thing. It's like you put them in it and it rocks them back and forth. They used it 2 times.
Yeah.
So we
got
to.
Well, that's another thing. When you're having your first child, everyone's like, you got to get this, got to get that. Then you realize, like, half the time you don't even use any of it.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't think we can help you out, Frankie. But I'm sure someone out there is willing to accept all that and would be very grateful for it. Prior to having you on, we're talking about the theme of the Maple Leafs camp, where it sounds as if, they're trying to get the word out, the Leafs, like, we want a competitive camp and we want people really feeling like they have to prove themselves. And I just don't think that's possible in the cap era. They know who the team is. Craig Berube knows who's on the team. Short of maybe a guy or two. Maybe the 7th defenseman. Maybe who's going to play the 13th forward. What's he going to do with Ryan Reeves? Who starts opening night? Joseph Waller-Stolarz. Like, I don't see it being much deeper than that. Do you?
The only thing that I would say when it comes to proving yourself, you're kind of proving yourself to the coach a little bit. Like, this is a new guy who has talked about how he wants to play a heavier style of game. And by the way, the Leafs are the 4th heaviest team in the NHL. So, like, they actually have the personnel that they could do that. I think if you're trying to appease yourself to this coach, basically what you're trying to do is play a little different at training camp so you can establish that you're not going to be in the coach's office every single day and he's trying to show you different clips of how you got to do things differently. Like, that's what it is. We know where everyone's going to play. Like, your top 6 guys, your top 6, your bottom 6, your bottom 6. It's like, prove who you are and how you can be different to this coach so that it's not a long process for him to try and change the way individuals play and ultimately how the team plays together.
Frankie, did you read the comments that Craig Berube had, though, saying, like, we want to be heavy, we want to be, like, I just don't understand. Like, does he he has to be speaking to certain guys, though, right? Like, you're not going to have everybody. Like, William Nylander's not going to run anybody through the boards.
No.
Mitch Marner's not going to run
Mitch Marner and Tavares and Matthews, none of them are.
That's the thing. Like, you can play a certain way. And again, regular season's not as physical. The ice isn't as contested as much. Some nights it gets a little greasy, but for the most part, it's a friendly game. You don't touch me. I'm not going to touch you. It's a Tuesday night in November. We're not, you guys get your points, we'll get ours. But then the ice shrinks and gets contested in the playoffs, and that's been the biggest transition for the Leafs, right?
Let me ask all of you guys this. We talk about heavy hockey and the importance of it and the teams like the LA Kings when they won their cups. The Tampa Bay Lightning went to 3 cups in a row, won 2 of them. How would you describe their style of play? Would you describe it as heavy?
Skill mixed with some heavy bodies on the back end, like highly skilled.
That's
and
what you're
pretty
looking
physical.
for.
And some big bodies on the back end.
But it's all not going to morph into like this heavy team where it's like, oh God, the Boston Bruins or the Florida Panthers. What they're looking for is a mixture.
Well, you know what he's got to do? He's got to almost over-exaggerate and over-correct it. Because if he wants to make a change that is a 50% change, he's got to make 100% of a messaging change for these guys. Like it's almost like they're going to over-exaggerate. But don't kid yourself, man. Like Austin Matthews came into the league 6'2", 6'3", 215 pounds. He's just as big, if not bigger. Like he can play a heavy game. William Nylander doesn't have to run anyone over, but he can hang on to the puck. Like he can spin off you down low. Like all these guys. And I think that message probably has to go to some of the guys lower in the lineup. Like if you're one of these guys like Holmberg or Camp or Yarncroke, like this is your chance.
Play heavy though.
But it's your chance to. It's your chance to kind of take a little more ownership and say, I'm going to try and play a heavier game. I don't know. Like I feel like they have to really send the message if they want anything to change, like over-exaggerate the message.
Sure, but it is a legitimate question whether or not, can you have an old dog learn new tricks? That's what I'm sure Sheldon Keefe was trying to establish at times, and I know because, Craig Berube, he is who he is and his reputation, but just by saying it isn't going to necessarily bring it to life. I don't know how you're never going to get Mitch Marner to play differently than he does. For 8 years, this is who he is. This is what he is. This is how he plays. Can he play better in big moments? Absolutely. It's imperative. He has to, and he's not alone. But Mitch Marner is not going to do something because Craig Berube said, I want you to do it. He's not going to do it. Star players don't do it. Superstar players don't do it. And Craig Berube is not a dummy either. Craig's not going to demand that. You got to go out there and do this. You got to throw 3 hits a shift or you're going to sit or something. It's not
if you don't want to run somebody over, then there's different ways. Like if you want to take it seriously and do things differently, Sidney Crosby does not steamroll guys. But you can watch film and watch how he does his business because I consider him a very physical player. Very strong in the puck.
Well, he competes,
very good
though.
in the corners.
That's the difference. Like he competes. Like he.
Okay, then Jamie, if that's what the word is, then add that into your game.
All those guys can compete. Mitch Marner, and you know what? To his credit, he wins battles. Like let's not pretend that Mitch Marner loses every stick battle or William Nylander. But I just think it's one thing to have a different kind of personnel, which they're not the 2014 LA Kings. Like they're just not built that way. But you can try and send the message to your group that, we're going to try and do this, and we need a buy-in from everyone to show us that you are making the effort. Like if the players turn around and they just say, not our style, not going to do it, what does that tell you about that group of players? But if you got guys that say, hey, you know what, coach? It's not exactly what we've been doing, not exactly our style, but let's give it a shot because what we've been doing hasn't exactly been working. I think that speaks a lot about the leadership and the character of that group that they've realized that they need to do something different in order to win because what they've been doing obviously has not been working.
You're kind of contradicting yourself a little bit. If they haven't had the understanding that they needed to add that kind of dash of competitiveness / physicality come playoff time to have success, then it's basically a lost cause. Like, for anyone to understand, the NHL, I've said it a zillion times, is the one league of all major sports where the level of play completely flips and it's completely different come playoff time.
It's a different game, different penalties. It's just
everything is completely different. Baseball's baseball. The NBA, Hayes, you'd have to comment on that, how different it is come playoff time. But it's like hockey's really different, and if they haven't realized it gets really different and they need to adjust, I don't know. That would be troubling in itself.
Well, no, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's what continues to frustrate people is that those questions have not been answered, and yet they're just going to go back and do another test, presumably get there and try to this time pass as opposed to fail like they have for 8 straight years. But you said, Frankie, that they're the 4th heaviest team in the league. What is that based on? Weight, height, like where?
Just weight.
Yeah.
Just weight.
So well, listen, I do think therethere's something to making sure your defense takes on that identity. I think that's more of a priority than your forwards. I think if Tanev plays heavy, I think we expect that he does, and he will. Ekman-Larsson's a pretty big guy that actually did play with physicality in Florida. Hakanpää's a big guy. Just because you're big doesn't mean that you're the toughest guy in the league, and I don't think Hakanpää is. I think he's a shot blocker that'll push people outside. But that is a form of it as well, and it's on Berube to establish what he means by that. Does that mean it's imperative you block every shot? That's a John Tortorella-ism. Like, Torts will not accept you flamingoing anything. That's his definition of heavy and tough and commitment to your team. You got to block everything, and you got to fight for every puck, and you got to battle, and if you have a hit, you got to take it. Like, that's what I'm curious if that's how Berube is going to approach it or what exactly he means. Like, how do you streamline that term, we want to be heavy? Here's my interpretation. What does that mean? How do you apply it to this Maple Leaf team?
If I was playing on that team, and this is what the coach was talking about, and I'm sure there would be a lot of video to go with it. If this team is playing in the offensive zone and they think it's going to be perimeter pass, tape to tape, behind the net, maybe find someone in the slot, and it's going to look pretty and it's going to look easy, and they're going to let you, the other team's going to let you do that stuff, like that is not going to happen. That's probably not the way Berube wants them to play, because you're going to turn it over. Like, you're not going to play in the offensive zone as long as you want to. So with that being said, like, heavier hockey with this group would have to be, you got to be willing to play below the goal line for 10 to 15 seconds longer than you normally would. And you can't just filter something out into the slot because you want to get rid of the puck or you think your buddy's standing there. Like, yet there has to be a willingness to pay a little more of a price offensively in the offensive zone. And I think they can do that. Like, you don't have to be Chris Kreider in order to do that. You just have to be willing to absorb some contact, roll off a guy, like, have some support, and like you're playing a heavier style of game. Like,
it's simple.
You don't
it's
have to be 225
in some fashion,
pounds.
Frankie, because if you remember, like, if you want to talk about like just simple stuff that's described as just like a heavier brand of hockey in the most simplistic terms, that playoff game against Florida where Marner dipsy-doodled and tossed it in the air, and him and Austin Matthews were playing hacky sack at their own blue line, and it ended up in the, like, that's not heavy, smart playoff. That's just a simple thing right there. Where if that's just a flip out or off the boards or whatever, that's simplified. And that's where you don't get yourself into trouble saying, oh, you're soft and you want to try this. Because that was a crazy play, man. At that time, I don't know when that time
of the game. That was game 2. I remember it vividly. I think it was Barkov that scored. And, yeah, the rest is history. I mean, they lost in 5. And that's a microcosm of what went wrong. But I do think that is taking something from what these other teams have done and had success with. I mean, Florida is a decent team to mimic. You mentioned Tampa. Tampa did that largely. Like, they had the biggest defense in the league, Tampa, when they went to their 3 straight cups.
Yes,
I think it's important to point out they also had maybe the greatest 3-year stretch by a goaltender in NHL history in the playoffs, or close to it.
Yeah,
Vasilevsky was absolutely
But dude,
absurd.
don't kid yourself with Tampa too. Like, they had these guys like Nick Paul and Ross Colton and Coleman and Goodrow. It's like these guys lower in the lineup made a big difference for those teams. And what kind of game did they play? Well, pretty heavy game. All those guys.
And that's the question when you mention Camp, when you mention Yarncroke, Dewar, Pontus Holmberg. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do they have it in them? I don't think
it's not exactly the personnel, but what are you going to do? You have to try and tell them this is what we need from you. You can't just say like, "Hey, we're
and that's
we're just going to accept what it is."
That's why he's here, to make it feel different and look different.
Yeah, the thing I noticed too, and this is where I think Craig Berube will come into effect here. there is no preconceived notions. Yes, he's going to know, okay, Austin Matthews, goal scorer, all of that, from watching the team and from afar. He's going to get them to know inside the dressing room, behind the scenes. It's going to take a time to develop that relationship. But what I'm looking at is I would love the team to play the same way. It seemed in past years there's different rules for different players. Whereas in Tampa played the same way. Kucherov can backhand saucer it to the middle. I get that. But he, 3 out of 5 times he would pull that off because he's that good. Mm-hmm. I felt like with the Leafs, there was a forecheck for Austin Matthews and John Tavares, and then there's a forecheck for, Järnkrok and Holmberg. And to me, if a team plays consistently, and Craig Berube's on record saying, I want to be a north-south team, I want to be a puck pressure team. So he's going to probably demand that from all the players, not just, hey, you know what, Järnkrok's got to do it, but I don't mind if Marner or Nylander decides to circle back on that play because they don't want to absorb contact or they don't want to make a play. That's what will be the difference for me in watching this team early on, is what he expects out of his players. It's not running a guy through the boards, but he's going to expect to compete for pucks in a different way, potentially. That's what I'm looking for from the Leafs.
And here's the best compliment that the Leafs could get this season. If we're halfway through the year, and if you were to ask Noodles, if you're down in a dressing room calling a game, and you ask a random NHL player, what do you guys talk about when you play the Leafs? Or, what kind of team are the Leafs? What's their identity? If the identity switches from, well, they'll go as far as Matthews and Marner and Nylander will take them. Or if we shut down Matthews, Marner, and Nylander, chances are we're winning that game. If it goes from that to, man, they're a good team, they're deep and they're hard to play against, like we just don't like playing against that group, that would be a big compliment for the group, because that seems like that's been the identity of the team. Star players are very talented and can win you a game offensively, but I never hear, man, they're really deep, they're really complete, and man, they are hard to play against. I don't like playing the Leafs. That needs to be the biggest difference.
Yeah, and I guess, again, who's going to lead that charge? Is it on those star players, the core players, to change the way they play, to prove that we're in it to win it, and we're all equal here? I don't know. And
Hayes,
expect that to really happen.
One thing on, we always mention, run a guy through the boards as, the description where we're not asking for that or coaching stuff. The one thing that I always wonder is when those skill guys get the puck, the opposition defense wants to kill them. Frank, you know what you told back there. It's you got to eliminate them. You got to play them hard, make them not want to go in the corners. I've never understood why there's not even an attempt for a hit. Just take a guy into the boards. They don't even want to do that. That's what I hope changes, where it's just like William Nylander's a big, strong dude. He could knock some guys on their asses.
He could.
And I know that's not going to be the play every time, but just get a little bit, just get in there and take a guy
in the
board.
Playoffs, O-Dog? Remember David Pastrnak went in there? He ran Morgan Riley through the boards. He was pissed off, and it showed. Every once in a while, just to see something like that, it goes so far on the bench, too. Other guys will see Willie doing something that he doesn't normally do, and they're like, okay, this guy's for real. We got to get going here. Look, even Willie's willing to do something that's kind of out of his comfort zone. But we can talk about this all we want. The biggest issue in the playoffs, as we all know, is the offense is dried up and the power play is dried up. So they need to keep that in mind as well, because that's been the biggest issue that's held them back.
I think they're connected, though, Frankie. I think, again, as you guys said, in the playoffs, it becomes more difficult to get to the middle of the ice. How do you get there? You use your size. You use your will, your determination. Say, screw it. You're not going to stop me here. And that's a part of the problem, is these guys, they have a field day against a bad team on a back-to-back when it's we're moving the puck around and there's ice everywhere and we're dancing. You never are ever going to get that in the playoffs. And all they know is the first round. Wait till you get to the third round, the cup final.
No,
you get no space. The other team is frothing at the mouth. The other team can smell a cup, and that's what has to be tied together here. Is yes, the goal scoring is a part of it, and sure, there are going to be opportunities where you simply just maybe you run into a hot goalie, or hey, you had a breakaway there, you got to score. You have a 2-on-1, you got to score. That is somewhat of a skill component, clearly, but a lot of it's going to be. That guy just said, screw it, I'm going to the net, and he battled, and he found a rebound and potted one home. And that's heavy. That's heavy play, making the other team basically wilt or coming to a conclusion that they can't stop you.
Well,
because you're too big, too powerful.
And go into those dress rooms. I was in the finals going in those dress rooms. Guys have ice bags everywhere. Like, it's literally like nobody's healthy. They're patchwork to get to the ice that day, that night. And, that's the other thing. You need health, you need luck, you need all of the things that fall into place to win a cup. But to get deep, like, nobody is 100%. Guys are playing with broken this and pulled that, and it's a price to pay. That's why I think it was so hard on Edmonton. They made it to Game 7 and they lost. And Draisaitl's playing with broken ribs and a broken hand, and who knows what McDavid's penalty was.
It's a price to pay, Noodles, where you look at these cats in Toronto and you wonder if they even know what that's about, what that takes, and if they're willing to do it. End of story. Bottom line.
Well, and it's got to look different now, right? There's a new captain. There's a new voice. It's got to look different on the ice. It's got to sound different after games, after wins, after losses. Or what was the point of doing all this? Like, something has to be tangibly different that we can see and we can hear with the new captain, and just the way that the roster is going to shape up.
We'll find out. I guess start next week. All right, Frankie. It's been a long, busy day for you, buddy. Appreciate you finding some time for us. We'll do it again soon.
No problem. You need me to take you to break or anything like that?
Please do. That would be outstanding. Set us up.
You want to go to break? Seriously?
Yes, you do it. It's your show, man.
All right, here we go.
Break.
All right, you're listening to OverDrive. This is Frankie Corrado filling in for Bryan Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 4 and TSN 1050.
Mail It In Fridays brought to you by Boston Pizza, the best place for any family meal. Plus, for the month of September, kids eat free with minimum purchase when you dine in. So grab the kids and hustle into your local BP tonight. Jay's back in action tonight. Downtown, that Boston Pizza on front will be rocking. What a spot to be for TIFF tonight, for the Jays game. Beautiful night, still patio weather. What a weekend it's going to be in the city of Toronto.
We got to get back there, Bri. We got to get back down to that Boston Pizza before the weather comes. Maybe next month. Early October. Early October. Let's do a little show down there.
See if they invite us back. It would be nice.
Yep. I don't see why not. I think we left our mark there. I think we left a very positive impression. Doogie as well, very professional. Everyone was buzzing about Doogie and his antics
had a
down there.
Great day down there. Was there an outdoor option for us down there or no?
Yeah, I think we can find a way to make that work for sure. So, all right, we'll look into that.
I kind of like where they put us last time, though.
Upstairs, kind of our own private area, had some security going. That was good, too. Yeah, it was a very positive outcome. Yeah. All right, we'll get the wheels in motion, right? We're already on our way to Montreal. Maybe a little Boston Pizza stop and chat at some point.
Oh, yeah, for
early
sure.
October. Dear Hazy being an hour. Luke Wilson with more picks for the rest of week 2. Luke coming up just after 6 o'clock. It is Friday the 13th today. We felt a little bit premature for Halloween stuff, but Friday the 13th kind of has that Michael Myers vibe to it, right? And it is, at times, we'll bring up Michael Myers, we'll play the music, we'll be thinking, all right, what would make you hear this music in your head? And I thought it was a perfect time with us talking hockey and the fact that rookie camps have arrived and the real stuff begins next week, and it is Friday the 13th. Why don't we kind of do a little role play here, a little role play Michael Myers mashup? All right?
Yeah.
You guys ready for this? Does that make sense?
I think we've done this. This can't be our first Friday the 13th, right?
No, we've had a number of Friday the 13th. So it just felt more appropriate today.
Friday the 13th.
We should do this every Friday the 13th, though.
Of course.
We should probably do a Michael Myers type mashup every time we run across a Friday the 13th, and that happens to be today. All right, you're playing the role of the Ottawa Senators. We'll get to the Leafs at the end. We'll all factor in on the Leafs answer, but you're playing the role of the Sens. What would scare you the most about either the roster or the setup going into this new season?
Their goaltending apparently is shored up. I still have question marks about the decor, about what they're going to do. I know they brought in Jensen. That would be my one question mark. Is that enough? Can Sanderson be the game breaker, the younger kind of Duncan Keith stud that's got the puck all night, getting it out of trouble, getting it into offensive, advantageous situations? And can the rest of can Shabbat be a guy that's just not out there for so many goals against and just doing weird things out there? like be counted on as like an $8 million guy. That's a high price guy. Like that would be my only question mark if I was sitting in an office looking at a whiteboard with all the names on it. That, like the forward group, don't get me wrong, there's a bunch of those guys that need to contribute to defensive hockey, much like the stuff we just talked about with the Leafs. But I wonder what that D-core is going to look like in their own zone. Because, Noodles, you were bench side. Yeah. You saw some stuff that was pretty gruesome last year, on top of what the goaltending was doing.
I'll go a step further for you, if you don't mind, just 2 words.
Go ahead.
Atlantic Division. Like, that would scare me. Like
that's scary.
That, like, they could have a great season, but you know who's coming out? That's the...
Yeah, I guess you could just literally look at the whiteboard and look at the division you're in.
Go, okay, like they have to have the season of their lives, and somebody else has to have a step back on either side, Atlantic or the Metro. Like you know, somebody has to have, basically they've got to hunt somebody and take them out somehow. That's what scares me, is because can they do that? Are they there yet? There's so many question marks, but I'm just coming back. You laid it out beautifully. There's lots of questions, but I would say Atlantic Division. That's just 2 words for it right there.
Yep, I think that's very reasonable. All right, Noodles, moving on to the West Coast. You're going to play the role of the Vancouver Canucks. What scares you about heading into a new season?
Thatcher Demko's knee. Knees, lower body, however you want to. That team, if you're looking at it, that Jake DeBrusk signing kind of under the radar, they've got a really good team there, and deep, and their D are big and mean, and they've got a lot of good things going on there. And Thatcher Demko is an absolute rock star of a goaltender. But if he can't be healthy and can't get to a level that they need him, there will be some easier nights, we'll call it, for them, just based on where they're playing and all of that. Some of the teams that are in a retool rebuild, but if they're looking to do damage, what's the expectation is there now for the Vancouver Canucks? 2 words, Thatcher Demko. That's my guy.
Yeah, that seems to be the buzz, obviously, out in Vancouver, just tracking what is being said and talked about online. It's like, what is going to happen with Demko? And Shilovs was great in the playoffs. Was great in a situation where he got thrown in there, and you've got him as your backup here, and he's probably going to have to start the season as the number 1 guy. But if you want to get to the promised land, you need Demko. He was so good last year. Yeah. And once you get to the playoffs, you're going to need your number 1 guy. You just can't be expected to go on a long run without him.
Canucks also got to prove, Hazy, just quick on the Canucks, they also have to prove that what they did last year is who they are. You know how teams can turn a corner and they have one fabulous season and then all of a sudden they return to kind of the old kind of weird version of themselves?
Yep.
That would give me a tiny bit of Michael Myers, where they get a little bit complacent. And it's like they have to show that that's what they are for good.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. You got to complacency would be scary. Complacency. Hey, we've done it now. We figured it out. It's all good. All right, I'm playing the role of the Edmonton Oilers here on Friday the 13th. What would scare me about this upcoming season? And it's birth certificates. It's the age of my team. I got an old team. And you talk about complacency. I don't think they will be complacent because of the roller coaster season last year. The way it started, I think that stunned them naturally. It should. I don't think they're going to start the same way they did last year. I think they're incredibly motivated, obviously, and I think they're a really good team. But you look at this: Connor Brown's 30, Henrique's 34, Hyman's 32, Janmark's 31, Nugent Hopkins 31. Again, these guys aren't way over the hill. Derek Ryan. And then on the back end, Arvidsson's 31. You've got Kane's 33. Corey Perry's 39. Jeff Skinner's 32. There's a lot of guys over 30. A lot of guys playing forward that are over 30 before you even get to the back end where, a number of guys are 30 and 30 plus. So that's the question. And we talk about trends, and a lot of times we goof on it with Al's brother and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure we've seen a team with this many guys north of 30, 31 that go on to win a Stanley Cup. It's generally a young man's game, and it can be tough to try to go back to the well with these guys. So that would be concerning, because everything else I feel pretty good about where I'm at in Edmonton.
I mean, I think the scary part for me would be as if McDavid was 33 or Draisaitl, those guys, they're still in their prime. They're big big boys are in their prime.
Yeah, they're going to have to give some of those guys a breather in February and March, where it's like those guys you just mentioned, Hayes, they might need a night off. I'm not talking about full load management, but just it's all about one thing for those guys. So whatever they all need to be ready for, because you just named off a lot of guys in their 30s, which in today's NHL, over 30 is. It's a number.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
it was even weird to hear Zach Hyman, 32.
32 years old. I know. Exactly. Ekholm's 34. Like, these are all really good players. Like, Ekholm and Hyman had unbelievable years last year. Nugent Hopkins into his 30s. But it is a number that does kind of stick out. Like, these are not guys in their mid-20s. Right. You know, and even McDavid is not long in the tooth, but he's going into his 10th season, I believe.
What is he, 27?
Crazy, man.
Yeah, what is he? Is he 27 now?
Must be. He was born in 97, so
27, turning 28 January 13th.
Yeah.
So he'll play as a 27-year-old, but I guess 10th year. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. I know. He's been in the league for 9 years. All right. Circling back to you're playing the role of the Calgary Flames here. Yikes. Scary stuff. What scares you the most going into a new season in Calgary?
The most is the pain that could be inflicted here on the fan base, because they're not going to be good again this year. And then the flat out truth of it is, if you don't draft some type of stud, and generally like a center, like, you're going to have a hard time getting out of it. So that's the scary thing. And I would stare at their whiteboard and say, when are we going to get a draft pick that's going to turn this organization around? Because that's probably the only thing that's going to do it for us. Because you talk about like scorched earth, that's the only way you get out of it. You've got to find in the top 5 a player that turns into an Austin Matthews, a Datsuk, a Connor McDavid. And that's your way out. And if you don't do it, you're generally kind of spinning your wheels for a long time. And the way that Canadian markets can be so fickle with other players around the league, it's like, can you afford to spin your wheels for more than... Like, they want to get that team cooking going into that new building.
Yeah, so that's 4 or 5 years or whatever it is. But you've got to have... You got to hit. That's basically what it is, guys. You got to hit on your young players. Like, you know, when you draft, like this Wolf looks like he might be a player, the goaltender. You know, you've got to find some other guys, whether it is drafting and developing or in trading away some of your assets and bringing in, you know, younger guys that need an opportunity. But they are kind of in that, you know, mid-level right now, retool. Like, they're not, Kadri's not going anywhere, I don't think, you know, Huberdeau's not going to go anywhere. Guys like that. You do need veteran guys to help the retool along.
What do you expect to see from Huberdeau this year?
God, what would be a happy season for Huberdeau? Point a game, 82?
Oh, he's not getting anywhere close to that. I think that ship has sailed, Noodles. Like these first 2 years, You're
telling me this guy got to Calgary and his game just left him.
How else do you explain it, dude? Like last year, he was arguably worse than he was the year before. His numbers, like he is at no point in Calgary looked like a player even remotely close to a point-a-game guy.
That's fact. That's not an opinion. That's not an opinion.
That's a straight fact. That's
you're just looking at numbers. You're just talking numbers. You're
strictly numbers. And watching him play. We're like that. It's not like, hey, snake bit and this guy's rocking tonight. Like, he has completely lost himself, and it's scary. I don't know how it happened. I don't know how it got so extreme. You know, is he capable of that? Of course he is. He had 115 points one year. Guy was a beast a couple of years ago. But I don't see that, Noodles. I think the bar is like, can he tuck 25 goals and 60 points? I think he'd take that right now.
I think that would be. He would think that was a great season.
Yes, which is crazy for $10.5 million for another 6 years or whatever.
Yeah.
All right, Noodles, you're playing the role of the Montreal Canadiens. What is scaring you the most going into a new season?
Just the development of you've got young players. Like, I think they're positioned for those young players to take another step. What would scare me is that if they don't take another step, if Slafkovsky takes another, like a step back, maybe. You know, what is Caulfield? I think we're waiting for Caulfield to break through. I really am. Like, I feel like Caulfield is a special player. You know, he changed his number in tribute for Johnny Gaudreau. You know, what is he as a player? Can he get to 40 goals? You know, I think that's my biggest thing is you want to continue trending in the right direction. If they have a step back season, now you're deciding, okay, what is that team? Where is it? Where is the future? And I think they're positioned to take a step. I don't know what that looks like. It's not a playoff spot, but it's take some points off teams that are playoff teams, you know, on a semi-nightly basis and compete. But that would scare me is if the young guys take a step back and you go from being prospect to suspect. And that's what I don't want to see.
Yeah, I think that's 100% accurate. Like it's about being stalled. Like you got to take a step, right? Like you've got to do it. And if you're just in the same spot after this upcoming season, then you've made mistakes, you know. And guys that maybe you've invested in or you've believed in just simply didn't get it done. All right, I'm playing the role of the Winnipeg Jets. What is scaring me coming into this season? Part of it's the division too. I think Dallas is really good. I think Colorado's really good. But I'll say depth and depth scoring, like scoring in particular. They're about a middle-of-the-pack offensive team last year. But they need, like Cole Perfetti, they got to figure out what they're doing with him. But they need guys like that further down the lineup. They need guys to stay healthy and put up numbers, Nick Ehlers and others, where it has not seemed like when they get into a shootout against a Colorado, if they get into something like that with Dallas or what have you, I don't know if they've got those weapons to keep up. You know, they've been a consistent playoff team. Like they've done a really good job, and a lot of that last year was Hellebuck was just so phenomenal that they got the job done. But you can't rely on Hellebuck every single year, and especially in this day and age where it can be a lot of times early in the year it's a goal scoring clinic out there, and it can be high scoring and high flying, and there's open ice. Do they have enough depth, enough talent to keep up with some of those juggernauts in the West when it comes to scoring goals?
Pretty simple for the Winnipeg Jets. I would have Michael Myers music playing in my head if I was Chevy, thinking they're going to trick everybody again to thinking that they're a serious contender, because they tricked me again last year. I was like, with that goaltender, and they went on a stretch, I think it was like January, February, New Year type stuff, where it was like they were 2-1, 3-1-ing teams to death.
Yes, they didn't give up anything.
Dude, they were. I was like, how does that not ever translate into playoff success? And then they got in the playoffs, and it's like they pulled their goalie in the first period and started playing hockey without a goalie. It was like, where did that team go?
Well, it was 20-some games, maybe 30 games where it was 3 or less goals.
Yes,
right?
30 plus.
Yeah. And Noodles, I'll give you props on one thing, because we talked about Hellebuck and how he's got to stop the puck. The amount of rubber that they were giving up in the playoffs,
it's ridiculous.
It was insane. It was insane. And what scared me is, how do you go from that tight defensive team winning 2-1 every night and dummying the whole league to what that was? It's crazy. So that would be the Michael Myers.
You're right. I'll add one more thing on it. The challenge is when you look at your team and go, like you're looking at Colorado, you're looking at really good teams in your division, and going, how are we going to how are we going to beat that team? Like, do we have the ingredients? Did we add the ingredients to get us over the top and go head to head?
4 times.
4 times. You're right. Keep in mind, you know who's going to be a team that to watch that we haven't mentioned? Because I think Nashville's going to be better.
That's right. Nashville in their division too. You're right.
Right, like Nashville,
Dallas,
they got
Nashville,
the goalie,
Colorado.
they got the D, and now you add in Stamkos, you add in Marcia. So on top of, the Forsbergs and Evangelista, guys like that, like they've got some skill there now.
Roman Josi, man.
Josi, like the D, yeah. So it would be. That's where I look for Winnipeg, is not to take a step back into mediocrity, but try and push through and compete with those big boys.
All right, we'll come back with where we are when it comes to the Maple Leafs going into a new season. And Luke Wilson coming up at 6. Dear Hazy B at 6:30. Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel, still to come as well. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. I understand that that's Jason Voorhees, not Michael Myers. People are chirping us online, being like, do you even know? Yes, we understand that. Thank you.
Well,
this
I
is
know,
not
because
an exact science.
I was sent a text from a dear friend of the show And he said, I'm saving you guys from a major blunder. You can't play Michael Myers music, wrong movie series, Friday the 13th.
We get it.
Means Jason Voorhees.
We understand that.
Camp Crystal Lake.
Not the point. The point is we always do the Michael Myers stuff. We have a built-in bit, and it happens to be a spooky day because it's Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Just relax, people. Come on. It's not that serious.
I am so tired of that. Like, anybody sitting at home, like, do you have nothing better to do? Like, who cares? Like, seriously.
It's really not that serious.
I'm getting too old for that. Like, I just send people messages. I'm like, please don't DM me anymore. I don't have time for this nonsense. Like, a guy yesterday was like, yeah, I don't think you needed to bring that up with Al's brother. I just said, sir, I'm sorry. We know what we're doing. Like, we're not stupid. And furthermore, do not ever DM me again. I don't have time for this. I'm too old.
What do you mean? Bring up Al's brother's whole thing?
Yeah, he's like, I just don't think it was right that you guys brought that up about Al's brother. I said, sir, we're not stupid, and we know what we're doing. We've been doing this a long time. We would know when the right time to be sensitive was. Al's brother's fine, and it's all good. And furthermore, I don't have time to talk to you. I'm too busy, man. I can't do it. I can't do it with the comments. Just watch the show or don't. Enjoy it or don't, and be quiet. That's it. Like, we don't need it.
All right. We just wasted all our time. We didn't even get to the Maple Leaf one. We'll get to it next hour, okay? And Luke Wilson will join us. Dear Hazy B coming up. Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel as well. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.